Meanwhile, the other problem on the foreign policy front this week was terrorism. It's back, like the Cold War. Yes. Terrorism's back too. And I think everybody has concluded we're in for some weeks of this terror threat heightened alert kind of status.
Hopefully, unless something blows up, because that would shorten the time frame.
Yeah.
But I don't mean to be flippant about it, but that's, I mean, literally, I think that intelligence officials are worried every single, I guess they're relieved every single day that something isn't happening, because they do have this sense, and there's been a lot of discussion about this particular communication between Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and Al-Qaeda Central in Pakistan. But what has intelligence officials even more concerned, my understanding is actually the confluence of intelligence reporting that points to lots of different ways in which there are discussions and planning going on around a very particular threat that they don't fully have a grasp on, except they know it soon.
But your understanding of that conversation is not that was the central command in Pakistan ordering up something, but rather simply being informed that things are afoot, which is a quite different thing. It means that the folks, Al-Qaeda folks out in the field and in the affiliates are proceeding on their own to some extent.
Yes, the affiliates are very much considered sort of laboratories of terrorism, so to speak, for Al-Qaeda, and it's the kind of thing where, in this case, the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula went to Zawahiri, the head of Al-Qaeda, and said, look, hey, this is what we got going on. And he said, wow, that sounds great. I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but that was more the nature of the exchange as it's been described to me.
Do you think there's any concern at the White House that that might look like overreaction if nothing happens? I mean, I'm not saying that's a fair criticism. I think the harsher criticism is if you underreact, but there has been this odd kind of like went from 0 to 60 almost overnight in terms of the terror alert kind of status in this town. Do they worry about that?
I think that it's always a balance for them in that regard, but they'd rather err on the side of being overly cautious than being underly cautious. I think they are extremely hypersensitive to August of 2011, and we are on the anniversary of that memo, and this president has particularly really gone out of his way to seem on top of it and to get as much out ahead of things as he could. I mean, he learned some early lessons, if you remember, in 2009 with the Christmas Day bomber, when he seemed almost aloof and not engaged and not addressing it.
And then he came down really hard on intelligence agencies.
And then he came down, and so there was a tendency for them to overcorrect, as the same as there's a tendency for them to seem over engaged in something like this. But my understanding is they would rather be on that side.
Yeah,
of
and I think
things
to be fair to them, my sense from talking to people, I suspect yours is the same, is that they genuinely think that there's something potentially big going on out there. This is not like, well, we're just going to be cautious. There's real fear.
And they think that there is some sort of specific plot, and while they don't have a handle on exactly what the delivery mechanism is or what the specific target is, they do feel like there is something specific being planned. And that's really different from, well, there's heightened chatter, it seems like they're, getting closer to doing something. They really do feel like there is something specific there, and so they're trying to take every measure possible to try to thwart it. And some of that is making it public. Some of that is drone strikes, and probably a lot of other things that we haven't seen yet.
Has Benghazi changed anything related to this, like the communication strategy or their approach? I mean, I realize it's a completely separate incident, but do you think that's affecting the White House's strategy at all?
Oh, sure. I think that's actually, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's defining it, but it's certainly influencing it in a significant way, because, I mean, Benghazi was almost exactly a year ago, and clearly what the administration has tried to do is go to school on the problems that they faced in responding to that, and that, I think, is driving a lot of the sense that they really need to preempt this threat. They're trying to push out as much information as possible, and at the same time they're in a tough position, because not only are they limited in the information they can provide because some of it is classified and in their view would harm operations, but they also don't know as much as they'd like to know.